Cool, good day. Today I'm here with my navigator Lindo.
Hi everyone, I'll be the navigator of this session.
Cool. So, I'm gonna be discussing chapter 20, login component, as well as chapter 21, adding and editing a review. So, let's start with login component. So let's see how that works in the front end. So basically, when I click the login button here, I can put my detail, my name, and my user ID. I always forget my user ID. Let's see. Yeah. 5472. Yeah.
I don't even have that thing, that user. What did you create it, or what, a user, or
User
or you just have a review?
Yeah, this is from the reviews. Like
Every time I log in,
yeah.
every time I log in, I just create a new username and a new password.
Yo, wait. Okay, we'll see how your database looks. Oh wait, but do you create a new review with all those users?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Your reviews collection's probably full. Yo. Probably has a lot of users.
I delete like review most of the time to check if the delete button is working.
Okay. Okay, I see. I just come here and get that user ID. Place it here, then submit. So then after that, you basically logged in after the submit, and yeah, let's see how that works in the code. So we have our login component, and it's gonna use props, right? So firstly, we have these two hooks. This is changing the state of the data in the name variable from an empty string to whatever we place in the input box when we're logging in, and does the same for user ID over here. And then on change name is changing the state of data and name, as well as on change ID changing the state of data for ID. Then we have this log in here, this constant log in, and the arrow function. And basically here we are using props, right? So we basically calling the login function from app.js. So basically we have props.login. Where this comes from is basically passed from here, and it's basically a prop passed as a function over here, right? So this is being made available to our login component, this prop. So it holds a specific login function. That login function is basically here, and it just helps us log in. So it changes the state of data of set of user to whatever we place in the input box for logging in. So this is made available to log in, and we're able to use that here as a prop. So it basically has an object here which takes the name and the ID that we basically inputted in the front end. Then after that, this over here just navigates us back to our home page. Do you understand this props.history, Lindo?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't understand how it works. I also got it from Master's Copilot. That is just after the user is done like logging in.
Yeah.
Like go to your front end, right?
After you log in,
like log out and
yeah.
log out and log in again. Just put anything. Submit. You see, it just takes the default. It takes to localhost 3000. It just redirects to the default page.
And then it
meaning
comes
it does
back
not
to
stay in the login like local 3000 slash login or state. It just redirects to the local host, to the main page.
yeah. Okay. So yeah, that redirects us to the home page. And then this is the form that we basically interacting with in the front end. When we filling in our name in the login form, as well as the ID, and of course when we submit, it calls the login function, and then that runs basically. I think I covered login. Did I miss anything? Do you want to add something or discuss?
No, I don't think there's anything to add.
Okay, cool. One thing though, so you see here, right? This this is basically,
Yeah.
it's a prop that basically what holds the login function, right?
The async function. Yeah.
And then that's so this is basically passed as a prop to our login
The login
component,
component.
so that we can use it, or we call it in here, and then it basically has the name and ID.
Yes. So the reason why we're basically getting, or rather, the reason why we're taking now the props from the app.js is because you can go back to the app.js file.
Mm.
You see, yeah, where we are calling now the login component there. The reason why we are now getting this is because instead of using like the component, we are using what's this prop.
Mm.
This uses render to pass extra pops into like the component manually, meaning if there are additional things besides what is in your login component, if there was something else besides the username, user ID, maybe there was something that's belonging to the username, the password,
Yeah.
email, anything, it can be passed in automatically with this instead of just using compose. You see the way there's render equals to props. Instead of this being component, it's render.
That makes
So
sense.
it passes additional items. Yeah, it passes additional items to this login component. So basically, the login equals to from there onwards. It's now props. It's now so that like it's after the render. It's like a function.
Oh yeah.
So
Okay.
render is equal to some function. Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
So that what that render is doing here is just passing additional item, and it's
So additional
trying
items
to
as in
not
like,
get our things confused.
yeah. So like you're saying, like if there was
Additional items can
password,
be
if there
anything.
was if there was extra details that we're filling in, right, in the login form,
Yeah.
then it passes those
Yeah.
that
You see
data
our
as well.
login component.
Yeah.
Our login component is now using is just taking in the username and the user ID. But if now we wanted to inherit something else, you wanted to get some data, maybe you wanted to get the password, you wanted to get the email now instead of just two simple things such as ID and name, we can just simply do that by updating what? By updating our app.js.
Okay, that makes more sense. Alright. I see.
Yes.
Okay. That's actually a cool activity to do after here. But yeah. Then
I think what we actually need to focus on doing is creating the user database so that we actually have users. We actually have an authenticating system whereby a user can log in with their username and password. Like in a normal app, there's no app you ever log in with your username and ID.
yeah.
There's no app like that. So we have to just make this work
I think
and create a database for that.
we'll first have to come here and probably create like a user's DAO now or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then
You have to create a user's DAO. Then from there on, you have to what's this? Do a user's controller.
yeah, then use okay.
and then create now. Also edit on the routes whereby you can have a post and get posting
Oh
to
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
the database and then eating
Eating
from the
from the
database.
database.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
backend is
backend is
not
not
difficult.
difficult.
As
Backend, why do I?
the
The
That's
front
front
end that
end
is
is
surprising for me.
complicated.
complicated.
That's surprising for me. Like that backend is more like it's more simple to understand than the front end. So, because I thought
But
front
it's
end.
fine.
I
Anyway,
I
guess
guess
another
another
thing that
thing
I
that I
don't
don't
like
like
about
about
this
this
book
book
is
is
that
that
we
we
are
are
like
like
using
using
like
like
a
a
long
long
like
like
a
a
updated
updated
code.
code.
I mean,
oh yeah.
it's
It's
not
not
updated
updated
code,
code,
so
so
like
like
it's
it's
code
code
from a
from a
long
long
time
time
ago.
ago.
So
So
now
now
there's
there's
actually a
actually a
new
new
method.
method.
Instead of
Instead of
using
using
render,
render,
we are
Yeah.
we are
now
now
using
using
element.
element.
See
See
where
where
the in
the
our
our
app.js
app.js
where
where
you
you
have
have
render
render
equals to
equals to
props
props
and
and
then
then
login
login
component.
component.
Wait.
Basically
Basically
now
now
instead of
instead of
just
just
getting
getting
in,
in,
go
go
to
to
where
where
there
there
was
was
that
that
login.
login.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Basically,
Basically,
yeah,
yeah,
all
all
those
those
render
render
things
things
we
we
can
can
just
just
like
like
use
use
element.
element.
Even
Even
component,
component,
they're
they're
no
no
longer
longer
using
using
component
component
now
now
for
for
the
the
React
React
version, version
version
6
six
going
going
upwards.
upwards.
It's
It's
using
using
element.
element.
So
So
you
you
see
see
why
why
like
like
it
it
always
always
says to
says to
update your
update your
code,
code
even
even
when
when
you are
you are
done
done
Yeah.
pushing
pushing
everything and
everything and
deployed
deployed
it.
it.
That's
That's
one
one
boring
boring
thing.
thing.
I didn't even keep that into mind. Yeah. Then obviously it won't work. Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
gonna
gonna
break the
break the
code in
code in
some
some
way.
way.
Yeah.
Makes me
Makes me
wonder
wonder
how
how
it
it
works
works
in the
in the
real
real
world.
world.
Yeah, we'll find out when we get there. It's almost time. We're almost there. Yeah.
Almost
Almost
time,
time,
ne?
ne?
Like
Like
the
the
Yeah.
year
year
just
just
went
went
pretty
pretty
quick,
quick,
eh?
eh?
It's July
July
now.
now.
It went. It flew. Let me start chapter 21. I didn't stop the recording, by the way, but yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Chapter 21, adding and editing reviews. Alright, so let's see. So adding and editing reviews. So basically creating and editing reviews. So let's see how that works. So basically, you come to one of the movies, right? And you add a review. Then this form pops up. Then we can put a whatever you want as the review there. Click submit. Then it shows the review basically. Then we can edit it as well. You can edit a review and submit, and then the review is edited. So yeah, let's see how that works. So add review component here. So basically this also uses props. Then we have here editing. This editing variable is set to false. And then this is set to a default state of an empty string. Then we have this if statement here. It is basically checking the state to allow for editing to occur. So how it does that is it says if props.location.state and props.location.state current review. So in other words, basically saying if the component receives a current review, right, then basically the editing will be set to true. So that means they'll be in editing mode, like they'll be currently editing the review. And then the initial review state will be changed to the current review.review, right? So from being an empty string to whatever the current review is. So like when we basically click edit, then we can see here the data there. So that basically changes the state to the current review that it's on. Then we have these hooks. This is just changing the state of review, and setting it to this initial review state, basically with the current review. Then it changes the state of data in here for submitted. It changes it to true after we submit the review, basically. So as soon as we click the submit button, then it changes that state of data to true from false. Then here we is basically an on-change review method, which is just changing the state of data for the review. Then here we have a constant save review. This is basically just to save the review with its specific fields in data. So we have the data we put for the review, the name, right, the user's name, passed here as a prop, the user's ID as well as the movie ID for the specific review that we're adding in that movie. Then we have here this if statement, if else. It's basically saying if editing is set to true. So if the user is editing, then basically it's gonna get the existing review ID. So the current review.id. So the ID for that specific review that we're editing. It's gonna get that. And then update review method, which comes from movie data service. Movie data service, that's basically in services. So update review, basically this is basically code. So it uses a put request, which allows us to edit that review that we're editing. So we call that, and then it edits the data. You can edit the data in the front end. Then this then promise runs. Then set submitted is set to a value of true. And if there's an error, this catch block runs. Then if it's not in editing mode, right? If editing is set to false, then that means we're creating a review, right? So this is specifically for creating a review. So create review method is called here from the movie data service. I believe it uses a post request. So then this promise runs, and set submitted is also set to true over here. So that allows us to create a review, so adding a new review basically. Then we have basically the form that we interact with in our front end. So here we have our conditional, right? So it's basically saying if submitted, if the review submitted, basically, right? So after the review submitted, then it'll basically show this div here in the front end. So it'll show this heading, review submitted successful, and it will show this link or this button, which is saying when we click the back to movie button, when we click it, we go back to that specific movie that we're editing, right? So basically how that works is, because we have /movies here, we attach props.matched.params.id. So we're attaching the specific movie ID that we basically edited and submitted the review for. So let's see. So basically this. So after we edit or add a review, it will take us to this this page, which is basically over here, this div, and this link takes us back to that specific movie that we're basically editing, and you can see the user ID attached, the movie ID basically attached there. Um, that's because of this prop, essentially. Then basically, if the user doesn't submit, right, then it will keep us on that specific form. So that specific form just basically, let's see how that looks. So that is essentially this form over here. It keeps us there if we haven't submitted. Um, this conditional Lindo, this one kind of like confuses me. Do you understand this?
Oh, the one that's in the form.
Yeah.
Okay, so the what's this? This condition editing, right? If editing is true, is going to, like, remember you have an editing boolean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the editing boolean is true,
So that's
then
like.
it simply means it's going to.
So it's the default state of that is false, right? So it's false.
Okay, so the defaulted state is false.
Yeah.
Is it though?
Well,
Okay, scroll down.
but depending on if we're editing, then it's set to true. Like here, it's set to true.
Okay.
But let me
Cool. So that condition basically means whatever condition that is, if editing, and then if the default state is false, then it's going to edit. If not, it's going to create. Okay, but that does not make sense.
You see,
This has to be set to true. Editing has to be true, right? And then when it's no, this is inside of what's this? Scroll up.
yeah.
This on its own is a condition, right? This on its own is a condition.
Okay.
You see? Okay. So let's understand that first.
Can I?
Okay, if
can I
this.
add? I think okay, I could be wrong, but because this is saying if submitted, because remember the default state is false, right? Set to false, right? So this is basically saying if it's submitted, then it shows this.
Then it's going to show, yeah.
If it's
not submitted,
then editing. This editing is what's this? Set to, I think set to true. Okay, no, never mind. I think I confused myself there. Never mind. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. Because if editing, if it's saying if editing, right, is true, is that what it's saying? Then then that means we're editing the form. If it's false, then we creating a form. I mean creating a review.
Let's go up again to understand the editing boolean. Where is it declared? Okay, cool. So we have editing by default is set to false, and then the initial review state is just an empty string. Okay. So the initial review state, meaning the review is just false. Okay, and then the component receives a current review. Please remove that a bit. Okay, if a component receives a current review via props that locates the state, it means we're in edit mode. If the component receives a current review via props location state, it means we're in edit mode.
I think it's saying that if, so like when there's like when we're on this form and there's currently like that's the current review. This is the current review because we see this data here, right? That's the current review with its data.
Yeah.
That means when the current review is there, then what's this? Then editing is set to true. So that means we're in edit mode because the current review is when the data is here. That's what this means.
Okay.
It's just hard to make that link to this
To the
condition,
form.
because if it's set to true here because of the current review being there, right? Then
Mm.
that means where was I? That means this means if editing is true. Because
Wait.
yeah.
Go to your thing. What's this? Where is this edit and create being shown?
Where's what?
Because anyway, okay, go back to your front end name. Go to maybe like a review and okay, submit that.
Let's go back
Back
to
to the movie, then go to that review and say edit.
okay.
Okay, so you see, look, when you are creating a review, you're gonna have on top of your form it's written edit review.
Yeah.
So this is just like a string that's being added to a review. I don't know if I'm making sense.
This you saying this is just a string?
You see that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that edit is just a string and that creates is just a string.
Okay.
Go back again. Yeah, go back. Okay, just click submit again.
Oh, you mean the front end? Okay.
Yeah, click submit. And
Back to
then
movie.
back to movie, creating a review, add a review. You see it's not written create review. At the top there,
Excuse me.
on your header,
Yeah, hold on.
on your label.
What are you saying? On my header.
Yeah, you see on your header when you are adding a new review, it's written create review. But when you are now editing a review, it's gonna say edit review.
So you're saying that's what these are basically?
Yeah, these are just like conditions that are being shown. Like it's just something that's being brought into your front. They're just words.
Yeah.
So
Because
these words, or rather each statement is just being returned if like, yeah, when you're clicking the edit button, it's gonna trigger the edit.
Okay. Okay.
Then when you're clicking the edit review, it's just going to now create, it's gonna show create review.
Okay. My question is, this is basically saying that is this basically saying if editing is true, right?
Mm-hmm. So when does editing become true? Edit becomes true when you click the edit button. That's when it is true.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense. That's when editing is true. So now let's go to now our edit. When does edit change? When does edit become true?
It becomes true when there's a current review, as you can see
Okay.
here. That's basically when you're in edit mode, when there's a current review. Outside of that, it's false.
Let's go scroll down. There's also another if statement there.
This one.
Right? I wanted to go through this if statement. Like this was the most important one because this is basically handling now our button and how our button works, right? So it's referencing. Remember, we have what's this? We have in our statuses we have a movie.js file name.
Yeah.
So now it's working hand in hand with that JS file, the movie.js file, which is, and then it has a class that's called movie data savers. So now, if editing is true, in this case, what is it doing? It's going to call the method which is update review, right?
Yeah.
And then look at something first before it has to call that class, or rather that method that belongs to that class. There has to be a review ID that's already existing, right?
Yeah. So
So for us to
the current
understand
review,
this,
the
we have
ID
to
to the
understand
current
the
review.
previous, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
hmm the
The
current
current
review.
review.
So
So
meaning
meaning
that
that
there
there
has
has
to
to
be
be
a
a review
review
first.
first. I
Okay.
don't
I
know
don't
if
know
I'm
if I'm
making
making
sense,
sense,
but
but
then
then
It does.
you
you
cannot
cannot
edit
edit
a
a
review
review
that
that
does
does
not
not
exist,
exist,
right?
right?
So
So
there
there
has
has
to
to
be
be
a
a
review
review
first.
first.
If you
If you
scroll
scroll
up
up
again,
again,
you're
you're
gonna
gonna
see
see
there's a
there's a
review
review
and
and
the
the
state
state
review.
review.
Um,
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
there's
there's
review,
review,
there's
there's state
state
review,
review,
right?
right?
yeah. So,
So
So
the
the
review,
review,
so it changes this review, right, to um,
yes,
initial review
to
to
the
state.
the
initial
initial
review
review
state.
state.
It
It
does
does
not
not
change
change
it
it
to
to
the
the
initial
initial
review
review
state,
state,
but
but
rather
rather
the
the
initial
initial
review
review
state
state
is
is
the
the
defaulted,
defaulted
or
or
rather
rather
the
the
initial
initial
thing.
thing.
When you
When you
go
go
to
to
the
the
form,
form,
you're
you're
gonna
gonna
see
see
that
that
it's
it's
empty,
empty,
right?
right?
Meaning
Meaning
when
when
it's
it's
empty,
empty,
it's
it's
just
just
an
an
empty
empty
string,
string,
which is
which is
the
the
initial
initial
review
review
state.
state.
But
But
then
then
now
now
it's
it's
controlled
controlled
by
by
the
the
state
state
review
review
function.
function.
The
The
state
state
review
review
function is
function
the
is
one
the one
that's
that's
gonna
gonna
change
change
your
your
review
review
from
from
being an
being an
empty
empty
string
string
to
to something
something,
like
whatever
data
that
that
you're
you're
going
going
to
to
add.
add.
Okay. Mm, okay, I get that. I get that. Great. So you're saying at first the initial review state it's empty, but if we
hmm
on if we
That's
That's
what
have
what
state
state
is
is
yeah
basically.
basically.
yeah, but with this if statement saying if there is a current review, then
hmm
the initial review state will basically hold the current review, and then
Well,
Well,
you
you
know,
know,
let
let
me
me
do
do
this,
this.
Nim. Take
Take
it
it
as
as
just
just
forget the
forget the
variable
variable
that
that
there's
there's
a
a
variable
variable
called
called
initial
initial
stage.
stage.
Just
Just
remove
remove
that,
that,
ne?
ne?
Go
Go
to
to
line
line
27. You
27. You
see in
see
line
line
27
27
where
where
there's
there's
initial
initial
review
review
states
states
inside the
inside the
parentheses.
parentheses.
mm,
You
You
yeah
can
can
just
just
simply
simply
put
put
like
like
strings.
strings.
You
You
just
just
can
can
simply
simply
put
put
the
the
quotation
quotation
marks to
marks to
show
show
that
that
this is
this is
an
an
empty
empty
string.
string.
Don't
Don't
actually
actually
need
need
that
that
variable.
variable.
really okay
So
So
this
this
can
can
just
just
be
be
like
like
an
an
empty
empty
string.
string.
That's
That's
how
how
state
state
works.
works.
Like it
Like it
has to
has to
be an
be an
initial
initial
value
value
that's
that's
being
being
stirred.
stirred.
So
oh
So
here
okay
here
they're
they're
because
declaring a
declaring a
variable
variable
for
for
us.
us.
okay yeah
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah you saying
So
So
they're
they're
declaring a
declaring a
variable,
variable,
but
but
then a
then a
variable is
variable is
set to
set
an
to an
empty
empty
string.
string.
So
So
without
without
you
you
like
like
declaring a
declaring a
variable,
variable,
you
you
can
can
just
just
simply
simply
say
say
this is
this
an
is an
empty
empty
string.
string.
okay
But
But
then
then
now,
now,
it's
because
because
a
a
variable
variable
is
is
already
already
declared,
declared,
they are, what are
what are
they
they
doing
doing
now?
now?
They're
They're
just
just
simply
simply
updating
updating
that
that
review,
review,
that
that
variable, I
variable, I
mean,
mean,
to
to
whatever
whatever
the
the
user
user
is
is
putting
putting
now
now
currently.
currently.
Let me
Let me
do
do
this.
this.
Let
Let
me
me
share
share
my
my
screen.
screen.
I
I
was
was
doing
doing
a
a
tutorial
tutorial
on
on
this
this
just
just
now.
now,
Ne?
ne?
Let
Let
me
me
do
do
this.
this.
Where's
Where's
this
this
tutorial?
tutorial?
So
So
you
you
see,
see,
can you
can
see
you see
my
my
screen,
screen,
right?
right?
yeah
Okay,
Okay,
where's the
where's the
states?
states?
So
So
here
here
you
you
have
have
basically a
basically a
name
name
and a
and a
function
function
that's
that's
called
called
set
set
name,
name,
meaning
meaning
set
set
name
name
is
is
controlling
controlling
is a
is a
function that
function
is
that is
controlling the
controlling the
name,
name,
meaning it's
meaning it's
controlling the
controlling the
change
change
that is
that is
happening
happening
to
to
the
the
name
name
variable.
variable.
So
So
this is
this is
our
our
state
state
variable,
variable,
and
and
then
then
this
this
is
is
now
now
the
the
function
function
that's
that's
controlling
controlling
our
our
variable.
variable.
If I
If I
make
make
changes to
changes to
this
this
variable,
variable,
if
if
I
I
want to
want to
make
make
changes to
changes to
this
this
variable,
variable,
what's going
what's
to be
going to be
controlling
controlling
it?
it?
It's
It's
going to
going to
be
be
this
this
function.
function.
So
So
you
you
see
see
the
the
initial
initial
value
value
of
of
this
this
variable
variable
is
is
what
what
is
is
an
an
empty
empty
string,
string,
okay that's
right?
the
right?
initial state yeah
So
So
this,
this,
yeah,
as
yeah,
soon as you put
yeah,
in
yeah,
this
this
is
is
let's
now.
say
now,
Hmm?
hmm?
as soon as you start typing in the it changes
Yeah.
Yeah.
the name
So
So
this
this
is
is
like
like
basically
basically
the
the
form.
form.
When the
When the
minute I
minute I
start
start
typing,
typing,
when I
when I
type
type
L,
L,
you
you
see
see
it's
it's
changing
changing
now.
now.
When I
When I
okay
type
type
something,
something,
it's changing,
changing,
it's
it's
changing.
changing.
okay I
That's
That's
how
how
it
it
basically
basically
works.
works.
Okay. Makes
So
sense.
in turn, I can also have say it's a variable and say, let's say this variable can be now word, right? And then I can now say word is an empty string, and then instead of having this, I can just say this is word. And then from
Right.
then onwards, this I'm just gonna be changing word. Whatever value that I type in here is just gonna be stored inside of word.
Oh, because you declared that variable.
Yeah, but
But
yeah,
it's
you see, it's not like I'm changing anything. It's not stopping me
stopping me
from
from
anything.
anything.
if you see there, okay, if you put in that string, let's say you put your name there, by use date you put your name there,
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
If you put
Let's
it
Let's
say
say
there
name
here.
here.
Okay,
Okay.
and then
let
you
me
Let me
remove
remove
refresh,
this.
this.
yeah.
This
This
means
means
the
the
defaulted
defaulted
string
string
is
is
gonna
gonna
be
be
name
name
unless
unless
pinged.
pinged.
You
So
see,
it's
See,
now it's
now it's
already
gonna
gonna
say
there
say
because that's
hello.
the
hello.
default,
That's
That's
the
the
yeah.
name.
name.
And then you can change it there, okay, in the front end.
Yes.
Alright, okay, that makes more sense. I see. I think I covered. I
Okay.
think I covered. Oh, I didn't just quickly discuss this last prop over here. Um, so here we have a
Oh,
prop.
Oh,
that
that
one I
one I
also
also
forgot
forgot
it.
it.
Yeah. So there's, oh yeah, this is the activity we both did. So basically, first created a greeting banner.js. So we created a greeting banner component over here, which has a div, and it is basically um, showing this header, welcome to movie reviews, and has a conditional pops. If the user set to true, then it will basically show the username right in the front end. So it will greet the user by greeting them with the specific username. But we use props to basically show that name in the front end. Um, these specifically this prop that we passed here, it is passed by um, you can say the parent component which holds that prop over here, which is user equals props.user. So it's making it available to the greeting banner component. So when we see it here, like yeah, basically you can see here hello with my name over there. And yeah, alright, cool. I think I covered chapter 21.
Okay.
Okay.